It's time for Reason.
5 states last night had their primaries, and the blue wave is not happening. The excitement, the activism, and right now the Republicans would have been able to maintain every single one of their seats in the 5 states, whether it was a House seat, whether it was a Senate seat, or whether it was the governorship or anything else locally that may have happened in those states. Republicans would have maintained every single one of them. Where's the blue wave, baby? Where is it? We're not seeing it.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
That's what I'm talking about. Welcome into the Voice of Reason, broadcasting live out of the heart of the nation here in Wichita, Kansas, on the Big Talker KQAM, simulcasting on KGPT TV and across the entire Mid-American Network. What's up? Welcome in. Happy Monday. This is the Voice of Reason. I am Andy Hoosier. It's a great honor to have you along today as we start off a brand new week. We are 1 week closer to Memorial Weekend, another holiday I know you're probably very excited about, which really sums up the kickoff of a summertime. Other than the actual meaning of what Memorial Day is supposed to be, it's really the kickoff of summertime. I remember, golly, in Colorado, you'd be trying to drive up into the mountains to go home at nighttime. And Memorial Weekend, what would usually take you about a 35 to 45-minute drive would take you close to 3 hours with all the different campers, with everybody trying to head up there with pretending like they are the ultimate outdoorsy types of individuals. Used to drive me absolutely nuts. Welcome into the Voice of Reason. It is a Monday. Let's go ahead and kick it off as such, right? Pumping you up not only for the day, but for the entire week, getting you excited, ready to go, as we always like to do, because we got a lot to talk about today. It's going to be a heck of a show. This is the Voice of Reason.
Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started.
Oh, yeah, 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, I'd love to hear from you today. What's up? What's on your mind? What do you got going in your neck of the world? Shoot me a message on Facebook. We have the Facebook Live feed up and rolling as well, facebook.com/1480. KQAM. You can also check us out on any of the pages, show pages or station pages that you are currently listening to. KGYN, KIUL, KYUL. Does not matter. Go to KQAMradio.com. Go to KIULradio.com. Go to KGYNradio.com. You can find the website. You can find the Facebook feeds. You can find all the information right there. You can also shoot me a message on Twitter at Hoosier Reason. Gotta say, it was a wonderful weekend. It was nice and sunny and beautiful here in the Wichita area. Outside Saturday, I got to have the honor to be able to host on KGPT TV, the TV broadcast of the Law Enforcement Appreciation Parade 2018 here in the downtown Wichita area. All the law enforcement of the surrounding South Central Kansas area, they got to get together. They got to show off a little bit and have their parade, and all the businesses and different organizations that proudly support law enforcement. And as we've talked about law enforcement quite a bit on the show, and as it's been kind of a hotly contested political issue for whatever reason, then it was really good to come out and show our support for law enforcement. I have some stories, and we'll talk about them later in the show today, but there's a lot of different problems happening in society, unfortunately, where we need law enforcement. And they always say, well, we don't need it. If you listen to some of the Black Lives Matter movements and some of the others that do not like cops, do not like law enforcement, do not like what they do, they usually say, we don't need it. We can hold our own community to our own standard. We can hold them accountable. We can stop people from committing crimes. We can take care of our own, because we don't need a police brutality, quote unquote, police state that tries to enforce its rules upon us. And that's just not true. If that were the case, then we wouldn't have crime. If that were the case, we wouldn't have shootings. If that were the case, we wouldn't have robberies. If that were the case, we wouldn't have people actually trying to break into people's homes. We wouldn't have them trying to break in and loot different stores. We wouldn't have it, because we would be keeping people accountable for their actions. We've talked to individuals before on the show about the fact of, oh, well, they're in our community and we don't like to rat them out. We don't like being the snitch. We don't like actually telling law enforcement about who's actually in our community and what they're doing, because it's none of their business. So we're not going to rat on people. Really? And that's holding them accountable, right? That's holding them accountable. This is what we have to stop. And we have to stop. And I know a lot of people, for whatever reason, have this beef against law enforcement. That just think that law enforcement is one of the most terrible, horrible organizations out there, when they're the ones doing nothing more than trying to keep peace, trying to keep people abiding by the laws, abiding by the rule of law. We've forgotten so much, and we've strayed so far in society to where we have forgotten that there's something called the rule of law. The rule of law, to where we have, there's the only thing that keeps you accountable to this law is what's written down on paper. Now, you could say, in a theoretical sense, that it's just a piece of paper. You could shred it up, rip it up, and then it's all done, and you can abide by it or not abide by it. But that is called the rule of law, that you actually have laws, and that as a norm in society, people that want to be part of this society, people that want to be part of this community, abide by these set of rules that are on paper, that nothing actually tells you that you have to actually do it other than that piece of paper. And if you don't want to abide by it, then there are many other places that have different sets of laws that you can try and go and live by and actually support as well. Because if you don't believe in them, then you believe in anarchy. And I don't care what type of economic disparity somebody's in. I do not care what type of stress level that they're in, that breaking the law, breaking the rule of law, and not abiding by the rule of law within your very own community is a problem. And that's what we have to address. And that is the reason, unfortunately, that we need law enforcement to be there to say, wait a second, or whatever you want to call them, law enforcement, peace officers, cops, I don't care. The reason that we have to have them, unfortunately, is because people do not like to abide by the rules that we have set in place, and that they've said by living here, by getting their registration, by getting their driver's license, by actually buying a home or living in an apartment, or actually just being a member of the community. They openly say, I support these types of rules and I'm going to live by them, and then they end up not doing so. They've broken a promise. And unfortunately, we have individuals in society that do that. And then when we try to enforce that, and we try to have a law enforcement, or we try to have some group, organization, whatever you want to call them again, that says, wait a second, you're not abiding by these rules, we're going to punish you because of that, then instead of actually saying, oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to take personal responsibility, and I'm going to actually change my ways, and I'm going to actually be better in society, then you say, no, you're terrible for trying to enforce it and trying to tell me what to do. You're terrible, and I'm going to come after you, and I'm going to hate you with every fiber of my being. That's where we're at today. So it was really nice being able to support law enforcement. I loved being able to sit down and actually watch law enforcement, watch everybody that says that they support law enforcement, and be able to help host that for KGPT TV. And thanks to them for allowing me to be able to host that on the TV site. A lot of fun. It was a great time, and it was beautiful weather, by the way, other than the insane, crazy amounts of wind that we ended up getting on Saturday as we were trying to have this parade. That was not necessarily as fun, but it was a great time. So I appreciate that very, very much. 316-721-8255. Lots to get to today. At the bottom of the hour, in about 15 minutes, I'm going to play our legislative recap part 1 that we had on Thursday of last week. We had 2 state representatives in studio for an entire hour. Obviously, we're not going to be able to play the entire hour broadcast of them talking about the legislative recap as the session is all done. It's over. What happened, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We talked with them about that. State Representatives John Whitmer and Chuck Weber. They were in studio. We'll play that interview coming up in just a bit. In hour number 3, we're going to do legislative recap part 2. As we have State Representatives Brenda Landwehr, along with Blake Carpenter and Leo Delperdang, all state representatives here from the South Central Kansas region, who's going to be in here for the entire hour and the third hour, 8 a.m. hour, and talking about the same things and getting their perspective on what happened with the legislative session 2018, going into the midterm elections as well this fall, and getting ready for the 2-year budget cycle year with the legislative session 2019. So a lot to address and a lot to get to there, and we'll do that coming up in the third hour of the program. However, now that we are broadcasting all across the Mid-America region for the first hour, KGYN, Oklahoma, that entire area in the Panhandle, and some of the Oklahoma politics, kind of interesting news coming up from down there. Some good, bad, and indifferent, as they've talked about raising taxes, unfortunately, with their budgetary problems. And they did, by the way, pass the constitutional carry. They ended up passing that. I'm not sure if the governor's actually signed it yet or not, but the legislature at least tried to pass that, which was really good news. And then they passed, trying to mimic, I think, what Kansas did, in a really good show of faith on trying to preserve constitutionality, trying to preserve some of the right things in the state of Oklahoma, the adoption laws for LGBTQ groups, and what some are calling discriminatory. Because remember, we always have to play the victim, and we're discriminated against. And that's always the go-to, is that every time we do something, then, of course, it's discriminatory against some group or some organization or some group of people, because we always like to play the mindset of the groupthink mentality. Oklahoma Governor Mary Fallin on Friday signed a law that says no child placement agency will be required to put children up for adoption or in a foster care in situations that, quote, violate the agency's written religious or moral convictions or policies. So a little bit like Kansas's policies that we just passed here this year as well. A little bit different. We'll talk about that after this break, about some of the details of that bill. Is it discriminatory, and is it the right way to go in the state of Oklahoma, where Oklahoma kind of up for many changes that we may potentially see in the next coming election and the next few years? Where are we going to go down there? Taxes, sales tax rates, spending rates, education rates after, of course, the teacher walkouts, and then, of course, this quote-unquote discriminatory call against the LGBTQ members when it comes to adoption laws and foster care programs in the state of Oklahoma. So we'll talk about that. We'll get your thoughts on that. Lots to get to today. It's going to be a heck of a fun show, because it always is, because that's what we do, especially on a Monday when you may be a little grumpy of the fact that it is now Monday in a brand new week. That's what I'm here for, baby. Let's make it happen. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Mid-America Network.
Back into it, 24 minutes past the hour. Happy Monday morning. Starting off your morning, the best way that we know how to do so. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. By the way, it's really sad that we have to break down things back to the basics, but sometimes we have to do that. Sometimes you've gotten so into the weeds and so into the mud that we just don't know where we're at, and we're trying to debate things and argue things. We see ridiculous, absurd comments on social media. You just have to bring it back down to the basics. Because sometimes when you go back to the basics, then everything just falls into place and it makes sense. Yet again, it's almost like socialism, to where you go so high up when it comes to quote-unquote education, and you're quote-unquote educated by the elites and by the progressives and by higher education, that you go so far into this on trying to understand the higher up understandings of economics and so on and so forth, that you sometimes forget the basics. And when you lose the foundational basics of an understanding of a concept, then you begin to believe things that just aren't feasible or just aren't true. And socialism just isn't feasible, or is it true to actually work? But at the same time, they believe it does because they have a higher education degree. Oh boy, they have a higher education degree. So therefore, they're way smarter than you. And then if they say socialism works, then that's fine. By living under debt as a nation, that's a good thing, because we created a system that understands us so we can flourish while we live in debt because of quantitative easing and all these other great programs, because we are so smart. No, you're actually just completely trying to manipulate the markets. That's really all it is, because you've forgotten what the basics actually are. And apparently it's okay to live your life that way as well. So that's where we come back to the basics. When it comes to law enforcement, again, why do we have law enforcement? Because we have something called the rule of law, and people forget to actually live by those laws and by those rules. Andy, the laws are bad. Okay, so try and change them. But at the same time, we really just have forgotten to live by the standard rules, again, by the basic rules of the golden rule. Treat each other as you'd like to be treated by yourself. You don't want someone to break into your home and steal things, right? So why would you do that yourself? I've never understood the justification of these things, and why, when we do try and protect ourselves, we could go back to the gun debate in that one, I guess, as well, to where if you're actually trying to defend yourself because someone's trying to break in, then you're the bad guy. Boggles the mind. It makes your brain hurt almost sometimes early in the morning as you think about why there's a justification for people to be allowed to break in and steal things. And then when you try to defend yourself and try and defend your family and your private property, then all of a sudden you're the bad guy because you had a gun. It absolutely boggles my mind. 316-721-8255. This LGBTQ discriminatory law in Oklahoma, as they are trying to do really what we did here in the state of Kansas, as they have signed to allow foster care programs and adoption agencies that are religious-based to uphold their values, uphold their religious beliefs, and uphold their teachings because they are, a religious organization, and be able to pick and choose on what families would be allowed to adopt or be able to be in part of the foster care program through those agencies. Now, again, it has nothing to do with other LGBTQ communities, because if they want to adopt, if they want to become foster parents, if they want to actually be involved in this, then just like in the state of Kansas, you can go to a non-faith-based agency, a non-religious organization to try and make that happen. Or you can go to one that will accept you. There's really nothing bad about that. There's really nothing different about this than any other state that's actually tried to implement this. Instead, this, according to the governor down in Oklahoma, said the bill will continue Oklahoma's successful placement of children with a broad array of loving families and basically maintain the status quo by setting forth a statute practices which have been successfully worked for by the best interests of Oklahoma children. She tweeted out, as of Friday, today I signed Senate Bill 1140, which allows faith-based agencies that contract with Oklahoma to continue to operate in accordance with their beliefs. Now, are you saying LGBTQ community members that are upset because you can't go to certain organizations that they've said, you know what, we just have different beliefs and, we're going to go a different direction, that just because of that, you are discriminated against, so therefore we need to discriminate against a religious belief because you don't agree with them? Is that what you're saying? Because if you live in today's society under progressivism, that they are so accepted and tolerant and lovey-dovey of everybody because they're the open-minded ones, they are so open-minded and tolerant that they will tolerate anybody except for ones that don't agree with them. And if you don't agree with them, then you are the bigoted, closed-minded one that will not accept them. Remember that. You are the closed-minded, bigoted one that does not accept them, so therefore they will not tolerate you and they will not accept you because they are so open-minded they accept everybody except for the ones that don't agree with them. It's really crazy how that's actually accepted as the normal in society today. It's really mind-boggling, again, makes your brain hurt a little bit at 6 a.m. in the morning to think about how that is accepted in society, and that's okay because this will go to court. This will go to court. They will take it to court. The LGBTQIA, whatever, XYZ community will take it to court and say it is discriminatory. And that even though we have options for adoption or for foster care programs, we have different alternatives to go and do that and just be the same as like everybody else, that they're going to go after the ones that tried to shut them out and close them out because how dare you do that? We should have our say in every different place that we want to. We should be able to walk in and be part of any community. And if you say no because you have different beliefs than us, then you're close-minded and bigoted. We will shut you down. We will oppress you. We will force you to accept us because we're open-minded and tolerant and respect your beliefs. It's crazy how that works, right? Lots to get to today. This is the Voice of Reason on a Monday morning. Stay right here.
Patriotism is alive and well. The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Hey, welcome into the Voice of Reason. Great to have you along today. It is a Monday morning on the Voice of Reason, which is one of our favorite days of the entire week. I know it may not be for you, but it is for me because I get to help you wake up and take a little bit of that stress or worry or fret about a brand new week off of your shoulders. Welcome in 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. I want to get back to some of the Oklahoma politics in just a minute, but I do want to shift gears a little bit. Last week on Thursday, we sat down with two of our state legislators for a legislative recap in the state of Kansas 2018, part number uno. as we talked about some of the bills, some of the education funding, some of the Medicaid issues, and other things. We sat down with two state representatives, John Whitmer and Chuck Weber, both of them coming in studio for an entire hour. I tried to condense that down a little bit, and this is what they had to say as of last week. We'll do this again for part number 2 coming up today in the 8 o'clock hour with 3 more state representatives. May do another part 3 either later this week or early next week again, because I do want to try and talk to as many legislators as I possibly can. But we did start it off Thursday as of last week with many issues happening in the state of Kansas, and this is what they had to say here on The Voice of Reason. This is State Representative John Whitmer and Chuck Weber from our legislative recap, Part 1, 2018. This session, and I wrote about this, by the way, our new website is up kqamradio.com. Under the local show tab, you can find The Voice of Reason. And I did a little blurb on the website of kind of a recap of this session. And after the 4 months, the question is, other than increasing some spending and focusing on education, what did we do?
Well, I mean,
that's the question.
Let me start with one positive, and this really probably didn't get a whole lot of play in the Wichita market, but we did pass the Adoption Protection Act. So,
yes.
So for social conservatives, I mean, thank you. I mean, that was a knockdown, drag out. Katie barred the door. I've never been called so many names before. I thought I was a pretty nice guy, once you get to know me. And so that I want to start with the positive because, kudos to our colleague Representative Susan Humphreys for getting that passed. And I understand that the governor is going to come to town perhaps this weekend and sign that. So let's start with the positive, the Adoption Protection Act. We can talk about the details of that later on if you'd like. But that was a good thing.
I do want to. And here's what I said, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I had 4 points of good news on this one. And number 1 was the adoption protection. And that was a great success that we had. Number 2 was stopping the expansion of Medicaid. Yep. It's not necessarily advancing anything, but we blocked an agenda that was trying to be pushed. And it pushed numerous times. What was it tried to on the floor? 5, 6 times?
Too many to count.
Yep.
It was,
Yeah. 3 or 4 really serious shots at it.
Some really serious shots. Number 3 was stopping some anti-Second Amendment legislation that tried to go through as well.
Yep.
Along with number 4 I had is a minor potential tax reform of being able to, which I guess didn't even happen, did it? So with the being able to write off and itemize your taxes as we do at the federal level. So
the Senate passed it, the House failed.
The House failed to pass it. So those are the 4 things that I really saw as somewhat productivity. Was that about right, or did I miss some stuff?
No, I mean,
I can buy liquor at 6 a.m., so I feel happy about that.
Yes, and we criminalized swatting, which, that was my bill, so it was, but at the same time, no, I think the bulk of our duty this session was damage control and just trying to stop stuff from happening. Sadly, we failed, in my opinion, probably our second most important task. I think the adoption protection was pretty important.
Sure.
But for me, trying to, people don't understand what the windfall is. They think this is, now the state's getting the windfall. That's what's going to happen. Kansas taxpayers, their taxes are going up, and the state of Kansas gets that money now so they can spend it.
Sure.
And so we failed in that regard. And we tried, but
we couldn't do it. And there's the bad news. I had 3 points of bad news that I want to get into. And you're here for the entire hour, which I appreciate as well. The phones are open if you want to ask a question or leave a comment. 316-721-8255. And we can talk to the two state representatives here. But let's get into some of the details of some of the bad news. And I put number 1 right off the bat, the state budget with over $7.07 billion in spending and an additional $530+ million in educational funding. Where the money's going, we're not quite sure. But here's the crazy part. We didn't do anything on taxes, so we really fell into the same category as what we saw in 2012 when we cut taxes, but we didn't cut any spending. Now we spent an additional almost over $1 billion in additional spending. Are we going to be in the same boat in the next couple of years?
Well, I think that's what the projections call for right now. I mean, this is like Topeka-ese or language in the legislature. The runs show that I think in 2 years we're underwater again.
Yeah, 2020.
2020, and so I think, Andy, we spent. It's interesting. Last year we raised taxes $1.2 billion retroactively on Kansas taxpayers, on Kansas workers. And oddly enough, actually maybe not so oddly, that's how much more we've spent in that period of time. And so we have this insatiable, when I say we, government, has this insatiable appetite for spending people's money that they earn out there. It just struck me today. Driving over here, and people busting their tails to get to work on time. Small business people, HVACs, going to fix the air conditioner because it's going to be 90 degrees today. These are folks that are working their tails off, and we're taking money out of their wallet so that they cannot go out to eat tonight, so that they cannot pay down the college debt for their kid or save for their kid. They cannot go on a vacation. They cannot do what they want to do with their money, and the legislature is just HE double toothpicks bent on spending your money, and it really chaps my hide. It really does.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because we need to hear and see that kind of passion. We didn't see or hear a lot of it, obviously, from the media, which is going to spin everything and try and silence that kind of discussion. But when we're spending $1 billion more, and we're not seeing that. I mean, they're going to hold it up. And I called this at the very beginning in January when you guys started going to the session. I said, here's my prediction of the session. We're going to increase spending. We're going to give education all that they want to or close to. We're not going to raise it because we see the tax receipts higher than projections each month. So the mentality is what we're going to hear is, oh, look, we can afford it because the economy is doing well and we're higher than projections. So we can put that money and apply it to there. We're going to run into a deficit in a year or two again, and come next year for the 2-year budget cycle after the election, mind you. Then we can turn around and say, oh, look, we're short again. Guess we better raise taxes for a third or fourth time. Yeah,
it's the sad part is we saw this coming. We knew it was coming.
Right. And it happened.
And we told... well, for example, when we tried to cut the sales tax on food, I can't tell you how many times we tried that. Every time it failed. Half the time it was because we can't. Why?
1%. I mean, we have 6.8, 6.9%. One of the sixth or seventh highest sales tax in the nation.
Well, on food we have the second highest sales tax.
On food,
yes.
Which I came from a state where we didn't even have sales tax on food. Colorado. When you buy food, there is no sales tax.
No,
on there.
So we're 8th on overall sales tax. The 7 states above us have no income tax.
Right.
So that's the only reason they have high sales tax is because you pay no income tax. We're one of those odd outliers that does both. It's sad. And, the biggest argument we heard on that, and you can thank Jim Ward for the defeat of those, by the way.
Yes, you can.
And the biggest argument we heard on not giving the folks back their windfall, they're allowing them to itemize or including a standard deduction increase, which would have really helped working poor, as I call them, Joe Lunch Pail. That's who really would have benefited.
Sure.
We can't afford it.
You can't afford
That's what we were told. We can't afford it because we need that money for the schools and for everything else so we can make it rain everywhere else across the state.
Yep. And why can't we afford it? I think you just hit it on the head. Because we want to spend money as fast as we can bring it in. I mean, that's just the bottom line.
And the sad part is, and I think Chuck would agree with me, I fully expect that we're going to be called back at some point this session because the court's going to find that school funding inadequate. The plaintiffs have already come out and said, well, it's a good start, but we need more like $1 billion or $2 billion. They have no grasp of reality. They're so detached from reality.
Which, adding it from year to year to year, what we've already been doing is already close to $1 billion, but that's not enough because they wanted immediate.
It's more than that. If you do the cumulative, as they joke, they used to, the revisers and some of the majority leader and a few, well, I guess he is kind of the minority leader, but anyway, they used to joke that it's Whitmer math because they would hate every time I'd bring it up, but I talk about the cumulative amount over 5 years because that's how much new money, and it's $2 billion in new money.
In new money.
And we were talking about the education bill on the House floor, and I went down to the well. And I'm not great at numbers. I have to see it visually. And so I was debating, I believe it was Representative Stogsdill from Topeka. And I said, okay, now tell me, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I think it's 174 this year, and then next year it's 174 and 174, and then add it all up, and it's like $2 billion. And he steps to the side and he confers with the minority leader. He goes, "You're about a couple $100 million short on that."
Yeah,
I mean, we're kind of walking through.
They didn't deny it at all.
No, they know it. They admit it. They acknowledge it and say, "Yeah, you know what? This is exactly what we're doing, and it's going to be cumulative, and we're going to get to the $2 billion, and then we can turn around and probably say again that it's inadequate all over again."
I think one of the things that's most frustrating for me, I have 3 teachers in my family. 2 of my daughters and my son-in-law are teachers. And I think, Andy, you talk about this a lot on the show, that if you're against something, then you must be anti-something. Mm-hmm. I am so pro-education. I have a son with a disability. I have 3 teachers in my family. Education is the great equalizer in our society right now. And it's sad that we're spending all this money and we talk about accountability. And what does accountability mean? What it means to some of the legislators up there is, well, we're going to do a study in 4 or 5 years and see if it works. And my question is, if it doesn't work, then what? and really, there's no accountability, what I call consequences. And so that, I think, is one of the most frustrating parts for me when we talk about the education debate. What are the consequences? What is true accountability if we're going to spend all this money? If it would solve our problem, which is 1 out of 4 Kansas students are not grade proficient in reading, writing, and math, science, then I'd go for it, actually. Sure. I'd pay that price if it would fix it. It's not going to fix it.
No, and the problem is they just don't get it. I mean, my mother was a teacher. My sister's a teacher. I was just, during our break that we took in April, I went down and spent half a day at Hayesville Middle School.
Okay.
And I sat in a classroom, met with teachers. It was a great experience. And they were telling me all their needs. You know, their primary needs is the money's not getting to the classroom. And then I go and I see the $80 million admin building that Topeka Public Schools just built with its new bistro and some of the other expenses. No, I'm serious. It's got a bistro. I asked about it. They said, well, the kids can work there and get credit.
Oh,
okay.
Sure.
Wow. Yeah, that's so. I'm going to get credit for my latte degree. I mean, but that's the frustration, is the money's not getting where it needs to get, which is teacher pay. We tried to run an amendment on the House floor just to require a 2.5% pay raise to all teachers. It failed. You know who voted against it? Most of the Democrats. This is the kind of stuff that gets so frustrating.
State Representative John Whitmer, Chuck Weber, they were on the show on Thursday as of last week as we did legislative recap of part number 1 for the 2018 session, and it really puts things into perspective, doesn't it? You try and target the money to exactly where it needs to go, and they vote against it. You kind of do it on the broad spectrum, allowing for the shenanigans, and, oh, yeah, that's much needed. Let's go ahead and do that.
You're listening
Craziness.
to the Voice of Reason on the Mid-America Network.
Welcome into the Voice of Reason, wrapping up hour number 1. Appreciate you hanging out with us today. It's a Monday morning, 316-721-8255. Better than a cup of coffee, a shot of espresso, even an energy drink as you start off your brand new week. You see an opportunity. At least here in the Wichita area, it's supposed to rain, from what I've heard, quite a bit the next few days. I'm sure many of the farmers enjoying that, going to soak it all up as we've been in kind of that drier season, getting ready for whatever farming season that it is, planting season, harvest season, I don't know. But I give you credit for actually wanting to do that every single year. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. By the way, as we talk about numerous, look, we need to be able to keep our finger on the pulse on many different states and what they're doing in our surrounding area, because we're in this together. Every state should be individual and sovereign when it comes to a lot of the decision-making that we do, when it comes to some of the policy-making that we have, and we should be able to use the examples of other states to be able to promote the same concept and same ideas in the surrounding states if it's a good idea. That's the purpose. It's not to set the blanket decision nationwide by the federal government, but it's for the states to make their decisions. I was watching a social media post over the weekend, and there was an interesting comment that was made about the deregulation that's happening at the federal level and how sometimes regulation is a good thing. And I said, what? I mean, sometimes maybe, but it's very, very few and far between. But the idea was that some regulation is good because now if we deregulate some of the auto industry when it comes to oil, then the gas prices will be able to go up because the government's not keeping it down. And some of the auto dealerships or the manufacturers won't create the gas-saving, very gas-efficient types of vehicles, and because that they're going to go for the gas guzzlers again, and then people are going to be paying out of pocket, and it's going to be unaffordable for a lot of people. And I made the comment again of the market, the private market, the free enterprise capitalist system will create a product that the largest population of the general public will actually want to purchase that is affordable to them. So if it's a cost-efficient little, gas conservative little stupid little Prius car or whatever it is, the stupid little smart cars that get, the 50 miles of the gallon and go meep, meep. If that's what the majority of the population wants, and that's what they're going to get, and that's what they're going to produce, because the people will buy it, because the businesses, I know it's a crazy, wild, shocking concept, businesses are in business to make a profit and to actually sell their goods. So they're going to create products that the consumer actually wants, as opposed to forcing people to just say, this is what you're going to get, enjoy it. And that's not the way that's the way government works. That's not the way the private sector works. On the front of Oklahoma and the state of Oklahoma, as we've talked about the LGBTQ community, when it came to the constitutional carry, I teased it a little bit earlier, and I thought it had gone through. It was voted in the chambers, in both chambers of Congress in the state legislature, but Governor Fallin did veto that constitutional carry bill. Quote, Oklahoma is a state that respects the Second Amendment. As governor, I've signed both concealed carry and open carry legislation. I support the right to bear arms and own a pistol, a rifle, and a shotgun. However, SB 1212 eliminates the current ability of Oklahoma law enforcement to distinguish between those carrying guns who have been trained and vetted and those who have not. Again, I believe the firearm laws we currently have in place are effective, appropriate, and minimal, and serve to reassure our citizens that people who are carrying a handgun in this state qualifies to do so. That is the statement made by Governor Fallin down in Oklahoma, as she had vetoed the constitutional carry bill in the state. Very interesting way to actually phrase that. So because we don't have that, then you do have the open carry, which means really essentially the same thing. With the open carry, meaning that you can actually carry openly without having to go through the permit process sort of deal. That's okay, but just having a constitutional carry means that, you know, then it's going to be not vetted, and if you have one, law enforcement's not going to be able to tell. Look, we need to remember the basics again of what law enforcement needs to do and what the basics of what Second Amendment is supposed to be. You can carry a firearm. That should be a law right there. You can carry a firearm to protect yourself or whatever necessary means that you need it for. If you're going to do something bad with it, then just know that there are going to be many other people, hopefully around you, that carry concealed carry as well, and that may stop you dead in your tracks if you try to do something stupid. And because of that, you do your thing, I do my thing, and everything's all happy hunky-dory. That's not going to change because you have concealed carry, you have open carry, and then you try and make it a constitutional carry, and all of a sudden things are going to go crazy. Not going to happen, and that really shows the state of where the governor is in Oklahoma. Sounds like we need some changes to be made down there to some degree. Kind of interesting, right? Lots more to get to. Hour number 2 right around the corner. Everybody on the western part of the state and beyond, have a wonderful Monday. Everybody here in Wichita, stay tuned as we have a lot to discuss. This is your show, as always. This is the Voice of Reason. Stay right here for hour number 2.
It's time for Reason.
5 states last night had their primaries, and the blue wave is not happening. The excitement, the activism, and right now the Republicans would have been able to maintain every single one of their seats in the 5 states, whether it was a House seat, whether it was a Senate seat, or whether it was the governorship or anything else locally that may have happened in those states. Republicans would have maintained every single one of them. Where's the blue wave, baby? Where is it? We're not seeing it.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Oh, yeah, welcome into the Voice of Reason. That's what I'm talking about. Hour number 2 of the Voice of Reason, broadcasting live out of the heart of the nation here in Wichita, Kansas, on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. Simulcasting KGPT TV, channel 2610. What's up? Welcome into it. The day you've been looking forward to, trying to start off a brand new week, and we're going to help you out the way that we do every single week, setting the tone for not only for today, but for the entire week, because you're excited, you're ready to go. We're ready to actually advance in a constitutional society.
Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here.
That's what I'm talking about. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. Capitalism, conservatism, traditionalism. There's nothing wrong with these things. And when you try and counter it and say that it's bad, then I don't care how many years of education that you've had in the higher education system, that really shows your intelligence level if you try and compete with some of those things. Welcome in. Lots to get to today. 316-721-8255. It's open lines to you for this hour. For hour number 2. Coming up in hour number 3, I am really excited as we are doing our legislative recap, part number 2, with State Representatives Brenda Landwehr, Leo Delperdang, Blake Carpenter. They'll all be in studio with us for the entire third hour of the program today, talking about what happened with our legislative session 2018, and we'll chat with that in just a little bit. So it is open lines to you, but I think that, every once in a while we have those moments where the aha moment, the ha-ha, yeah,
We did it! We did it! We did it! Yay!
It really makes you open your eyes for something. You really start thinking, the light bulb comes on above yourself, and it really starts to make sense. And I think I've had one of those moments. As I see a story, first off, hat tip to Cake TV for this story. Local business owners team up to catch thieves. We talked a little bit about this in the first hour when it comes to law enforcement, which, again, I do appreciate the opportunity to be able to host the TV broadcast for KGBT TV over the weekend for the Law Enforcement Appreciation Parade that was on Saturday. We did see a good turnout for that, by the way. It was a lot of people enjoying and going out there. It was a beautiful day, other than the crazy wind, which drove me nuts. But it was a beautiful day. It was a lot of fun, and hopefully you did get to go out and support your local law enforcement. But we see a story like this. Local business owners team up to catch thieves. Thieves have been targeting the Auto Medic in south of Wichita again and again and again. They say they've seen more thieves than normal in the last 6 months, costing the shop hundreds of dollars. We're not claiming insurance on this. We just pay for it out of pocket. Zach's Car Wash as well, and the owner put up the cameras so that they can see both shops after burglars cost him over $2,000. The cameras captured a woman stealing money out of the car wash money box. Quote, "We pinned them into car wash bays, calling the police and still couldn't get an arrest made." Both owners made their frustrating on how long it's been taking to catch these serial burglars. Issue after issue after, and we mentioned this in the last hour, but I'm very concerned about the lack of respect for the rule of law. What is, and maybe you've heard this before, or maybe you've heard someone talk about, what is the justification for someone who feels like it's okay to go and rob a store, rob a car wash, to rob an auto shop, to go and rob a bank, to go and rob? What's the justification of thinking to yourself mentally when you're in your head thinking, hey, you know what, I'm going to do this, to think that it's okay? And I haven't quite been able to figure this out yet. And I've always wondered that, because I've always been, obviously we do stupid things once in a while. We speed a little bit too much and we get, a problem when we get a speeding ticket and we don't quite follow those laws. I've never, even as a kid, I never stole a little piece of candy because you thought it was just a piece of candy and just thought you'd say, I've never done that before in my life. I don't know. I've never thought that those things were okay. I was always taught that there are rules and that you just abide by the rules. Every once in a while, you slip up and you do something stupid. You're like, okay, I shouldn't have done that. And you know that. And you've done that before. Everybody has. Nobody's perfect, obviously. But to do something that drastic, to go out of your way and say, you know what, I'm going to do something so insane that I'm going to go and rob a store. I've never understood any type of justification for that, whether you feel entitled that you own it, whether you're of the and by the way, think of the progressive ideology throughout all of this stuff, as well as we talk about the different examples or the possible justifications. I'm entitled to it. The argument progressives use all the time of, I feel the entitlement, I deserve this, right? That the shop owner can afford it, right? Because he's the rich and elite one, or she's the rich and elite one that actually owns this business, and therefore you have less and they have more. Therefore, we need to distribute. And the government and the progressive liberal mentality of saying that it's okay to redistribute because we have to redistribute because someone may have less than somebody else. So therefore, you're entitled to take it away because you are the victim. You are going through a hard time in your life. And you make sometimes a stupid mistake. We get that. But again, a stupid mistake like that is a little bit of a drastic one that I don't care how bad off that I may be at some point, I will never go down that road. I would never even think of going down that road to actually want to go and rob a store. But because you are going through a hard time, the world maybe revolves around you at that time. I don't know. To where you feel justified to say, yes, I'm going to go rob somebody. So there's one aspect of it, and I think the light bulb has come on for me to help understand why people would go down that road, other than, of course, being a liberal progressive that has that mindset of thinking that you're entitled to somebody else's goods or private property or wealth to some degree. Other than that aspect, I see the story that came out of the Daily Mail from the UK this morning, as they say, here's the headline: short man syndrome, or the Napoleon syndrome is what it's called, is actually real. Scientists confirm smaller men act more aggressively to make up for their lack of height. It seems short men do really act more aggressively than their peers to make up for their small stature. Researchers use money-sharing conundrum, dubbed it the dictator game, which tests how fairly individuals treat others. It typically consists of two individuals, with one given a quantity of money when they must offer a portion of to a rival, even if the amount is zero. They found the shorter men responded more aggressively when competing in the psychological test, so long as there were no repercussions. Scientists say this means the phenomenon known as the short man syndrome or Napoleon complex is actually real. There you go. Apparently, if you're a short individual, and I would say maybe a short woman as well, because some of these cases, the thieves were actually women. But if you're a short individual, then maybe, just maybe, the Napoleon syndrome is real, which says that you're a little more aggressive, which means that you would take a little more aggressive action, like wanting to steal something. I would really love to see a stat. I don't know if we could find this. I don't know if this is feasible or possible, but I would love to try and find a stat that says that how many short individuals compared to tall individuals, which I don't know where that arbitrary line is of what considers short and what considers tall, compared to what the medium height of somebody is. I'm guessing, like 5'8"-ish, 5'10", 5'6", I don't know. Maybe that's the medium line, and short compared to tall when it comes to criminal activity. I'd really almost like to see this. Because maybe that would, other than the mentality of someone saying, hey, you know what, I'm entitled, in the progressive liberal mindset, you really have to be a liberal progressive in order to do something like that and disregard the rule of law, right? I mean, you really do. Let's just use that as a basic here, and just that is kind of the default mentality that someone would have in that situation. You'd really have to, other than that, maybe be shorter. 316-721-8255. Nothing against short people. I mean, come on. I'm relatively short-ish. I mean, I guess I'm the average. My wife is very short. Not very short, but she's shorter. I know a lot of short people. I don't know. Do they have more aggressive behaviors? Would they have the Napoleon complex? When it comes to the local businesses and trying to actually protect themselves from thieves, we can go down the road of understanding the mentality of why someone would actually want to steal or loot, but we can also go into the discussion as we have about law enforcement and what the role of law enforcement actually is. And law enforcement is to be enforcing the law and to stop people from doing this, but it's very difficult to do so. And when it really comes down to it, as we mentioned many times before, is that when it comes down to it, whether it's you personally, whether it's you in your business or whatever, that you have to take control of the situation and actually do it yourself. And that is protecting yourself, your business, and your private property. Because if you don't, then it's the doing the cleanup afterwards. If there's a murder in somebody's home, the law enforcement can't always be there to stop it as it's actually happening. They're there to clean up the mess thereafter and try and hold the person that did that accountable for their actions and try and punish them, if we can find the right person. That's the most difficult part that we actually have. We need to remember that our safety, that our private property, that the responsibility of ourselves and our family come from none other than us and us ourselves. And law enforcement, for the most part, actually understands this. They understand that you have to do what you need to do to protect yourself in that situation, that law enforcement can be there to help the best way they can, but they're not always going to be there right on the snap of a finger. They're just not. It's not feasible. It's not possible. Unless we have personal bodyguards for every single person in the country, which just ain't going to happen. So we really need to remember who's responsible for it, and these businesses are actually starting to do that. The question is, at what point is it going to be too extreme for them because they continue to see more looting and more robbing from these, either the auto store or from the car wash or from wherever it may be in the state or in the city? At what point will the business owner start saying, you know what, I'm going to start carrying a gun, and if they come and they try and steal something, I will shoot them, and I will not miss. And then we get a whole other issue on our hands, and how many people are going to start crying and saying that you're not justified to do that because these people died by an innocent little thing like trying to steal a few bucks out of a car wash. The fact is that you're not allowed to do that. The fact is that's breaking the law. So the question I have for you is, what is that line on what's justified and unjustified for the protection not only yourself in your home and your personal property, but for a business as well, if we've tried to catch people from doing this? And when or how can we reach those individuals that do have that liberal progressive mindset of feeling entitled, of feeling desperate, of feeling the world is around them and that they can do whatever they need to do in order to survive, and that's okay and therefore justified? How do we reach them to teach them that this is a society, this is a town, this is a community with the rule of law, to where we abide by that, we follow that, and become a productive member of society, as opposed to trying to attack that rule of law and shake up the system? Because I don't think we're ever going to reach them. But it's our duty to at least try. 316-721-8255. How do we do it? That's up to you and I. Is it the community accountability? Because that hasn't worked so far. And when law enforcement does go knocking around and asking by people's doors, knocking on the doors and asking the neighbors, they don't say anything, even if they have sometimes seen something, because they don't like to be the snitch and actually go tattletale on their peers, on their neighbors, on maybe someone that they may even know. They don't like to tattletale, so therefore they're not going to say anything, which means that we continue to allow them to get away with these dirty acts. 20 minutes past the hour, your thoughts and calls on this when it comes to law enforcement, when it comes to our public safety, and when it comes to our personal responsibility and how it all intertwines together. 316-721-8255. This is the Voice of Reason on KQAM. Stay here.
You're listening to the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
25 minutes past the hour. What's up? Welcome into the Voice of Reason on a Monday morning. Great to have you along. 316-721-8255. Mark my words. According to that study about the Napoleon complex, the short man syndrome, if that's apparently going to be the more aggressive type, next time that you have a potential burglar, someone breaking into your home or your shop, and you see him short, you know the first thing that's going to run through your mind.
We didn't listen! We didn't listen!
Mm-hmm. 316-721-TALK. The sad part about all this is that you've seen the stories now, and they're starting to become more frequent. You remember the two, I don't remember where it was, the two 17-year-old students that tried to break into an elderly man's home, and they had the brass knuckles, and they were going to beat him a little bit and try and loot the house and see what else he had. And he ended up shooting them with an AR-15, and of course, that was the big news of how dare that he had an AR-15 for one, and number two, he shot and killed the students, because that was a way too severe punishment for the type of crime that they were actually committing. They didn't need to die for just something like that. They weren't going to harm him, maybe just knock him up a little bit, just beat him up a little bit, and you know what? It's fine, whatever. They just could have got a slap on the wrist and it would have been fine. And the parents and the grandparents of the children were actually very upset about this and tried to go after the guy for defending himself, because they had broken into his home and were going to beat him with brass knuckles and then steal everything out of his house. And he ended up defending himself, and he's the one that's now in trouble. Then you see the other story down in, Florida, with Trayvon Johnson, where the family went after the homeowner who ended up killing him. How else is he going to get his money? Because he was breaking into a home to try and steal and try and loot and try and do whatever. We have now become so far away from understanding the concept of the rule of law that we now actually say that if you break the law and you actually get in trouble breaking the law, or you get killed breaking the law because you're potentially doing something very, very bad and you ended up getting shot and dying, then now they are the victim, as opposed to saying, well, they probably shouldn't have been doing something stupid like that. Because we've gone to crazy land in society today. It is our very first one of the entire week. We're going to be doing this every day of the week, Monday through Friday. It is your chance to get registered for your Indianapolis 500 tickets, your chance to go to Indy 500 up in Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and it's because that's happening Memorial Weekend. So here's your chance.
I'm going to drive, and I'm going to go fast, and I'm going to turn to the left sometime.
Call now at 721-8255 and get registered with KQAM.
There it is. It's time right now. Let's do caller number two. Caller number two, we'll get you registered. We're going to do one person each day this week, which means you have 1 in 5 chance to win a pair of tickets to the Indianapolis 500, brought to you by Autotech. 4411 West Central Avenue. You can visit them, autotechwichita.com. Also, Sig's Gourmet Meat, 300 South Baltimore Street, or on Facebook at Sig's Gourmet Butcher Shop. Those two presenting our opportunity. Now, you got to get yourself up there and get your hotel and your living, your travel expenses and all that jazz, but we do have 2 tickets for you for the Indianapolis 500 for you to go up there, have a weekend up in Indianapolis, enjoy Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and see what they call the greatest spectacle in racing, which is the Indianapolis 500. We're going to be broadcasting, by the way, the Indy 500 right here on the KQAM airwaves. The first year that we're actually doing this, we really appreciate having the opportunity to jump on and be able to carry that broadcast. But thanks to Autotech of Wichita, autotechwichita.com, and Sig's Gourmet Meats on Facebook at Sig's Gourmet Butcher Shop. You can find both of those. We appreciate them partnering up with us, allowing us to give these tickets away. And we'll take caller number 2 right now at 316-721-8255. 316-721 talking. The phones are lighting up. We'll get to you here as we go to the break and get you registered for your chance to win those tickets. Here's how it works. We register one person each day this week. We'll be doing the drawing and the announcement 1 week from today. On Monday next week is when we announce the winner for that, to give you an entire week to make your planning reservations and get everything ready to head up to Indy. It's going to be a hell of a weekend. Come on, get up there, see it, Indianapolis, see the Speedway, one of the coolest speedways in the entire country, and see one of the greatest spectacles in racing that is the Indy 500. We'll take those calls as we go to break and get someone registered right now. This is the Voice of Reason. Stay here.
You're listening to the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Right on! Let's do it! Rock that world! Rock that world!
Give him a call at 721-TALK.
What up? Welcome back into the Voice of Reason. It is a Monday morning, better than a cup of coffee, a shot of espresso, even an energy drink, as we rock conservatism, traditionalism, capitalism, free market enterprise-ism on a daily basis. And those that don't support that, that understand that, then we're here to help. Sometimes the first step of moving forward is accepting what's actually going on in your life, right? It's acceptance. And then you move on from there. And that's what we're here for. Step number 1, let's accept that sometimes we make non-conservative, traditional, capitalist, and free enterprise types of decisions, or we hate those that actually do. Congratulations to our winner, by the way, for the first registration of our tickets to the Indianapolis 500. We got 4 more to do starting tomorrow. Stay tuned in. We'll do another one tomorrow as we'll get you registered for your trip to Indy and to get you some tickets to the Indianapolis 500 coming up on Memorial Sunday. 316-721-8255. But along with that, let's go to the phones and let's talk to Scott. Scott, good morning, sir. How you doing?
I'm good. The issue of official misconduct needs to be brought up as well, because, I mean, you have to remember that Golden State Killer, he was a cop, and several other officials in different type of industries have cost the country millions of dollars by doing illegal activities in their official duty, even though they had themselves sworn to uphold justice or the law. They tend to use their position to an advantage to where they can cheat the public and rob the public. So, I mean, these people are the ones that cost us more money as far as damages that they do.
Well, you're right that there are, as many other organizations and many other groups or whatever, that there are bad apples and the bad seeds in that group. And you're right, there are people who have taken advantage of their positions, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's elected officials and politicians, whether it's business owners who have taken advantage of their power, who have taken advantage of the opportunities that have been presented to them. And when they do that, then they need to be punished just as much as anybody else, and we need to hold them to the same standard as anybody else, if not more so, because that they do represent, whether it is an elected official representing our votes, whether it's someone who's wearing a badge representing the rule of law, whether it's a business owner that is representing the face and voice of a product that you and I buy, or many of the employees that actually work there. They need to be held accountable for every action that they do, just like anybody else.
Yes, because, whether it's in the movie industry, you had people like Woody Allen who, he should have been expelled from the, what they call that, the movie industry's...
like the movie guilds or something? Sure.
Yeah, the movies guild. Yeah, he should have been expelled long ago. Maybe he had certain type of connections that protected him.
Well, of course they do. And they always try and protect themselves the best way that they can. They always try and have, either a fall guy. Come on, look at the mob and the mafia and some of these guys, that they always have a fall guy whenever they get caught doing something bad, whether it's, the drugs, whether it's beating somebody up for a payment, or whether it's, knocking someone off and killing them. That they always have the fall guy, and they always try and protect themselves, and that's our duty to try and hold them accountable and be able to try and bust up that ring, which is sometimes very difficult to do. But you're absolutely right. If someone's doing something bad, like Harvey Weinstein was, and he was assaulting women left and right in order for them to be able to get different roles in different movies, that needs to be shut down, and hopefully he will never ever do that again, and he will pay severe punishment for that, like whatever he ends up getting.
We don't know how many other people who are, like I said, in those positions who, some of them kind of probably just quietly retired or maybe died off or something. But, all of this stuff's probably been going on way before any of those guys. And as far as politicians go, I think here locally they're talking about a commissioner, a county. But like I said, I've always said they need to have an investigation around here, specifically in this Sedgwick County, because, they're doing a lot of criminal activity and getting away with it. They're just flamboyantly getting away with it. It's just crazy.
Well, and sometimes, investigations are not a bad thing. Scott, I appreciate that. When we look at some of the internal investigations happening in our state legislature with maybe, audits when it comes to where the money's going and knowing exactly where it's going, as opposed to just kind of saying, here's the broad paycheck, do whatever you want to with it, and then the programs still aren't actually operating the way that they're actually supposed to be doing. That happens at the federal level, at the state level, and, who knows, maybe at the county and city levels as well, to where we need to be a little more transparent on exactly where the money is going. We can talk about that with law enforcement. And look, this gets the bad rep, because you bring up a really interesting point of, the bad apples and the bad seeds that are in different organizations. And that's why some people do not trust law enforcement, is because there have been a few that maybe sell drugs on the side when they're supposed to be upholding the law, or some that actually try and abuse their power and do something bad when they're supposed to be upholding the law. And then because of that, then the entire organization gets a bad reputation. And that's really unfortunate. And it almost reminds me of how conservatives get lumped into this group or this mentality, to where one Republican, because he's a Republican and maybe upheld as a conservative or a staunch fighter for this and that and the other, and then a Republican does something bad, a scandal happens, and then they say, oh, look, even the person that says that they support these traditional values, support this or support that, they're doing these shenanigans on the side. Look at that. We have a corrupt system that you can't even be conservative without doing something bad. And it's not true, because when we talk about conservatism, when we talk about nationalism, when we talk about patriotism, when we talk about these ideas, and we talk about, for example, maybe the greatness of the nation and why we respect the American flag as opposed to kneeling to the American flag, and when we talk about these different mindsets, we talk about the philosophy behind it and the idea behind it, as opposed to the people representing that idea or that concept or that philosophy, because people are flawed. There are flaws in humans. That's just the way it is. It's genetic. It's biological. It's just the way it works. There are flaws in humans, and we're not talking about the people. Have you ever noticed you're in a debate with somebody and you say, oh, look, America is the greatest nation on the face of the earth, and we need to represent and actually respect the American flag. And they come back and say, well, look at all the bad things America's done. And look at this, and look at that. You stop and you say, wait a second, no, that's not what the idea of America is supposed to be. Have we made mistakes? Duh. Every nation has. That's just the way we've been. We need to fight for what the vision of America actually is. What is that vision? That all men are created equal under God. The right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The right to life, liberty, and property. The right for a limited government. The right for you to make the decisions that you have the ability to make by yourself as an individual with your own individual accountability and your own individual responsibility, not the government doing it for you. Well, look at the last person that represented that and tried to talk about that. They were corrupt and they did this and they did that. I don't care about them. I care about the vision. I care about the idea. I care about the philosophy. And we need to remember that when we uphold and we fight for these values, that the progressives love to be able to steer it away and try and damage it by tainting the name of it because of who has done something in the past that tries to represent that philosophy, as opposed to the idea and the concept itself. And whether we're talking about why the nation is the greatest nation on the face of the earth, have we made mistakes? Sure. Have we grown from them? I hope so. Are we continuing to move forward? I hope so. Because we need to remember what the values of this nation actually are. What the American flag really represents, not what the people and the government have done to damage that name and that reputation. Remember, the government is not the country. You ever heard that argument, is that when we say we represent the American flag and that we need to be patriotic, that some believe that we're just the fascists falling in line with whatever the government says? That's not that at all, and I don't know where that even comes from. The government is not the nation. And if you believe the government is the nation, and that if we're patriotic and that we're nationalistic by truly believing that the nation is the greatest nation on the face of the earth, and we truly believe that, and that all of a sudden we're going to fall in line as this fascist nation, falling in line with the government and whatever decisions they make, then you're the one. Don't turn it around on me, but you are the one that truly, honestly believes that the government controls everything and that you look towards the government for all the answers. That's your mindset, not mine. Because when I look at nationalism and when I look at patriotism, when I look at the fact that the nation is the greatest nation on the face of the earth, that's because of you and I and the people that make up the nation. The people that actually create what this nation actually is. The melting pot of the people, of all different types of people that create this melting pot. Not the government. The government has nothing to do with it. The government usually leads us astray from the original intent of nationalism and patriotism, what this nation's supposed to represent. Don't tell me because I love the country and I love our American flag and the symbolism of what that represents that I just fall in line with our government, that I'm all of a sudden just this fascist Nazi that wants to fall in line with whatever decisions my government makes for me. No. If you believe that, then you're the one that actually looks towards the government for your answers as opposed to looking to yourself for those answers. Let's go to the phones and take a few phone calls, shall we? 316-721-8255. Good morning. What's your name?
Jim.
Jim, good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Andy. Hey, when you talk to the legislators this morning, whoever is responsible for that amendment not coming to the floor, they should be replaced. And that was the number one thing, and they should absolutely be replaced. Until that's done, people aren't going to start doing what they should do.
You're talking about the constitutional amendment to the Supreme Court.
Yes, sir.
Yes, absolutely. I completely agree. I mean, that was supposed to be the number one focus that many legislators had on their plate. The leadership said that they weren't even going to address educational funding until that got addressed, and then they ended up turning the corner, not thinking they had enough votes, shying away from it, and it never got to the floor for an actual vote, and we are very frustrated about that. So you're right. That is a question that we will talk about, and hopefully we can get some answers on who tried to kill that and shut it down and what we can do from here on out.
Yeah, just because it wouldn't pass, that's not the point. The point is we want to know who voted against it then.
That's the point. You're right. We want to expose them. If they voted against it, then we need to figure out who they are and why they did it.
Thank you much.
Hey,
Andy.
Absolutely, Jim. I appreciate that very much. Great point. That's going to be a huge discussion for hour number 3. We are having our legislative recap, part number dos. In hour number 3, as we have State Representatives Leo Delperdang, Brenda Landwehr, and Blake Carpenter all in studio with us for the next hour. So that will be a question that we will bring up. Let's go to the phones, take another phone call, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
This is Gary.
Hey, good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Hey, I was commenting on your the young kids that got shot by the homeowner.
Yes.
I don't know if it's the same one or one real similar, but it was a young boy and a girl, or a young man and young woman. And the young woman was recorded as begging for her life.
Who was begging for her life again now?
This girl. The young boy had broken into the home.
Okay.
And of course he was going to steal and do some harm.
And she was begging for her life. She lived there. He had broken in, and she was begging for her life because he was going to do something to her.
No. Okay, you had this homeowner and this young couple, boy and girl. I think they was boy-girl friend. The boy broke in. She was outside and then decided to go inside, tired of waiting on him, whatever. Well, he shot the boy, and then when she came in, he shot her too, and in the process, he had even recorded what had gone on, and she had begged for her life before he shot her.
Wow. I had not heard that one. That one is a new one to me. I don't think that was the same one that I was talking about earlier. So another case, again, just another prime example of, I'm sure that because of all that, then he still got to play the victim of the fact that there was a gun in the home trying to defend themselves while he was doing something extremely stupid and probably deserved whatever he got.
Well, the guy had been broken in several times, and so he just had enough, and you know.
Wow.
But anyway, the one thing to the point, like, why would you break into someone's house? How could you possibly, like you was talking earlier, you
How can you think that's a good idea? I don't get it, Gary. I love it. I got to take a break, but you're right. I mean, I don't know. There's a crossed wire somewhere to where some people feel that's justified and that's okay, and I just don't understand that. Lots more to come. Stay here. This is the Voice of Reason.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason, wrapping up hour number 2. It goes by way too fast, but we appreciate all the phone calls. Great conversation. We'll keep that rolling. 316-721-8255. This portion of the Voice of Reason, as it usually is on a Monday, brought to you by the AARP. Whether it's the Fraud Watch Network, the Retirement Calculator, getting involved, protecting your identity, it does not matter. The AARP's got you there. Marin Turner back on the line with you. Marin, how are you today? Good morning.
Good morning, Andy. How are you?
We're living the dream. It looks like we might get some moisture today, but it's a beautiful morning and a great way to kick off a brand new week.
Yes, I think it is. I'm looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Well, today is the big day, and we've been talking about this for a few weeks. I've had numerous individuals asking about some of the details on the happening today. I got to give you guys credit. I guess my wife got really excited about doing the spring cleaning and getting everything ready, but we are kicking off the Great Shred Day that's happening today, brought to you by the AARP.
Absolutely. Yes, this is a really important day. Not that shredding is the only way to protect your identity, but it is a really great way to get rid of some documents that contain confidential information that you don't want to get into the hands of people who can hurt you and scam you.
Sure.
And so we are having a shred event today at the Dillons, located at 135th and Maple, between 11 o'clock a.m. and 2 o'clock p.m. We're encouraging people to bring 2 to 3 boxes full of documents that contain sensitive information that they'd like to have destroyed. Very good. That's going to be a fun event. Are you expecting a big turnout for this one today? We really are. These tend to be very popular events, and so we're asking people to come early if they can. And when you come, please bring a non-perishable food item, if at all possible. With the end of school, there are going to be a lot of children who aren't going to have enough to eat this summer. And so we're asking people to bring non-perishable items like peanut butter and cereal and canned fruit.
Fantastic. Very good. It's going to be a really great event. And the importance of that, I mean, really helps with people's protection of their identity when it comes to a lot of people, maybe not when they go through their mail, they see some of the junk mail, they see some of the information of maybe they got a new debit card or credit card in the mail, and the documents and the papers that go along with that really can lead to lots of identity theft or people compromising the new information. The new cards can compromise their identity themselves, and it gets out of hand. And then you have a whole, it's really a long process of trying to fight that stuff because it can get out of hand pretty quickly. And this is a great way to try and help prevent some of that.
Absolutely. You know, someone's identity is stolen every 2 seconds. Can you believe that?
Wow.
Identity theft increased by 8% last year, and more Social Security numbers were stolen than credit card numbers. So, again, it's really important for you to destroy documents that have confidential information. If you're going to use a shredder at home, make sure you use a micro cut, because the micro cut shredder will shred that information into confetti, and nobody can put that together again. And I want to remind people that come out today to the Shred event that you can put your name into the hat for a drawing for a free micro cut shredder.
Very good. Oh, that would be really nice. I'm sure a lot of people would enjoy that because there's the different types of shredders that they have. I don't even know if we had the micro cutter, but just one that really just kind of shreds it into the graffiti looking stuff. But there's still ways in many of these cases that people can actually try and piece it all together if they're really adamant to try and get that information. Sometimes I don't even know if it helps to be able to put different, if you do shred things, maybe put half of the shred into one trash can and then some other shred into the other trash can, so that way they can't try and piece it together. There's different ways you can do it, but it's unfortunate. Again, we've been talking about different crime rates on the show earlier in the show today, but really the fact that there are just people that want to do that for whatever reasons, and it's up to you and your responsibility to try and stop that from happening.
Absolutely. If you get a strip cut shredder, it's basically useless because crooks can take that information back together. You know, you may think, well, who's going to take the time to do that? But if somebody wants your personal information, they may just do that. And then there's the cross-cut shredder. It's a little bit more secure, but again, the best thing to do is to get the micro-cut. And
sure.
We'll be offering that as a prize today to some lucky person who is able to put their name in the hat to win one.
Very good. I love it. One more time, the identity protection is extremely important. One more time, how can people get a hold of you at the AARP? Also, where and when is that event today for the Shred event?
Well, again, we will be at the Dillons, located at 135th and Maple, between 11 o'clock and 2 o'clock. And we're encouraging people to come early and to bring a non-perishable food item to donate to kids who may not have enough to eat this summer. You can call us at 1-866-448-3619 or log on to our website to find out some of the documents you need to destroy and when you need to destroy them. That's at www.aarp.org/KS.
There it is, Marin Turner with the AARP. Marin, we always love talking to you. Appreciate it very much. Have a great week, a great event today, and we'll chat with you again next week.
Thanks, Andy.
Always a pleasure there. Brought to you by the AARP. Check them out, aarp.org/KS for the state of Kansas. Let's wrap up hour number 2. Hour number 3, right around the corner. We're going to our legislative recap 2018 part dos. We got a lot to discuss. It's going to be a lot of fun. Your thoughts and calls as well as we come back for hour number 3 of The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
It's time for Reason.
5 states last night had their primaries, and the blue wave is not happening. The excitement, the activism, and right now the Republicans would have been able to maintain every single one of their seats in the 5 states, whether it was a House seat, whether it was a Senate seat, or whether it was the governorship or anything else locally that may have happened in those states. Republicans would have maintained every single one of them. Where's the blue wave, baby? Where is it? We're not seeing it.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Oh, that's what I'm talking about. Welcome into the Voice of Reason, hour number 3. The Voice of Reason broadcasting live out of the heart of the nation here in Wichita, Kansas on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side. KQAM is the day we've been looking forward to. It is how many people say that? I love Mondays. That's the way we roll today. It is a Monday, so let's get you started off the right way. Setting the tone for not only today, but for the entire week, because we have more fun than any other radio program. It's a Monday morning on the Voice of Reason.
Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started.
That's the way we roll. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, you can shoot me a message on Facebook. We are on Facebook Live right now. Check it out, facebook.com/1480KQAM. We're on Twitter at Hoosier Reason. Also, check out the new website, KQAMradio.com. You can find the weekly guest lineups. You can find podcasts. You can find all the goodies and stuff that we're involved with. Again, I got to go out and enjoy the Law Enforcement Appreciation Parade over the weekend. That was a lot of fun with KGPT TV, which we are simulcasting on right now, channel 2610 as well. So we're just all over the place. If you can't find us, that's your own damn fault. 316-721-8255. It is time. We did this last Thursday with two state representatives, John Whitmer and Chuck Weber. They were in studio on Thursday and doing part number dose again today as we are talking about the recap of the legislative session 2018. What did we do? The good, the bad, and the indifferent out of the session, and we have three state representatives in studio with us. First off, Brenda Landwehr. Brenda, how are you today? Good morning.
I am wonderful. Thank you, Andy.
Great to have you along. State Representative Leo Delperdang. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir.
Great to have you again. And Blake Carpenter. Good morning, sir.
Howdy.
Good morning. Great to have you as well. I got to see you out in the parade on Saturday. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a blast. I'm glad that there was a lot of folks out there supporting our local law enforcement community. It was great seeing all the police officers out there, and I'm glad that they're there and they protect us, and I'm thankful for what they do. Thank you to all the men and women in law enforcement.
Amen to that. And it was a decent turnout. It was really good. The wind, though, God, that was ridiculous. I don't know how bad it destroyed some of the floats, but it was really hard.
Well, you don't have much hair, so you don't have to worry about that too much. But
well, that's true.
My hair was pretty messed up. So.
The wind was blowing in my face. Yeah, that's right. No, it was fun trying to do a TV broadcast with the mics and trying to keep that wind from doing that. That was pretty brutal. But anyways, nonetheless, we did have a question right off the bat, and if you want to call in and ask a question or make a comment about the legislative session, you can at 316-721-TALK. But the first question right off the bat that we already had from last hour that was really kind of a hot issue, and I was a bit frustrated. I know many of you were a bit frustrated, as the biggest issue, the constitutional amendment protecting ourselves from being able to have more lawsuits of our own taxpayer money, going into lawsuits for more taxpayer money towards education, to limit the power of the Supreme Court, and to try and stop this nonstop ending litigation. We came in with that kind of the priority of many saying this is what we have to do this year because this will be the last year that we have to worry about this garbage. The leadership then coming out towards the end of the session and saying we're not going to address any type of educational finance until we address the constitutional amendment. Then literally like a day or two later, they turn around and say, well, we're going to address the education funding, then we'll address the constitutional amendment. And in the last week of the session, they just said, yeah, we're just not going to get to it this year. The question is, I guess, why? Brenda, what do you think first off?
Well, I think there was a lot of pieces that went into that, Andy, in that we had, first of all, on the equity, we have equity and we have adequacy. Those are the two pieces that the lawsuits are driven by. And a lot of people were concerned in Western Kansas that on the equity issue, which would still be allowed to go to court, that they were being told that districts like, Sedgwick County, Johnson County, different places would start, taking the money from them. Mm-hmm. And so the rural districts would lose. So they were having a really hard time maybe picking up some of those folks out there. The other was, we kind of ran out of time. I mean, we got put on a clock like I've never seen before. And I mean, it was a hard clock. There was no choice. You either had to do it or you didn't have to do it.
Sure. It really got down to what the priorities were at that time. Do you think that leadership maybe turned away from it just because, like you said, maybe the votes weren't there and they were concerned about it? Or would it be a good idea maybe to put it on the floor, either in the House or in the Senate, and say, if you don't vote for this, then this is the priority of what many people wanted, and you're going to go on record saying that you don't support that? I mean, what do you guys think?
I think, Andy, it becomes kind of a mixed bag because, like, again, we had some good people in Western Kansas that may have voted no because of what they were believing rather than, really looking into the depth of it. And you don't always want to put your people on record.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't. Leo, what do you think on this one?
Well, Andy, first off, I'm going to go on record saying I am a hardcore yes on the amendment. I've had lots of feedback from my district saying do it, do it, do it. And I've read through, you're talking about the Bill 5029, I've read through it. It just changes a couple of words. Article 6 in the Kansas Constitution it doesn't talk about adequate or equitable. It talks about the legislature shall provide suitable funding for education.
The legislature, not the Supreme Court.
The
legislature.
That's right. And when you look at the amendment, it only changes just a couple words. The legislature shall determine suitable funding for education. So it's not like we're changing the whole Constitution around or the whole article. We're changing a word or two. And I think the way I've read it, it looks pretty good. Yes, I agree there should be some checks and balances between the three branches, but it's the legislature that should be in charge of determining it.
That power of the purse kind of mentality.
Yes, it is. And it should be your local school boards that determine how that's spent. It's not a legislative function. That's my opinion on it.
Blake, do you think it's going to come back next session? Is that going to be another priority, or do you think it's even going to be used on the campaign trail for some as well?
Well, I would like to just voice my opinion as well. I am a yes on this as well because I think for too long now the Supreme Court has been basically dictating over 50% of the Kansas budget to the legislators, and the legislators are capitulating every time. It comes down to, okay, let's play a game of chicken, and unfortunately, it's always the people's representatives that, for some reason, tend to blink against these unelected individuals. As far as does it come up again in the future, I don't think it's dead. I think it does come back because this is such an important issue and it's such a major amount of our money that we have to address it. And here's the thing. If you total up over the next 5 years, 2017 money all the way out to 2022, the amount of money that was just spent on K-12 education over the next 5 years, if you add all that money up together cumulatively, it's $3.2 billion over the next 5 years. We can't afford that. And actually, right now, you have individuals out there going, well, we got through this session without a tax increase. We're moving forward. And no, the tax increase is coming. Or you either have to raise taxes or you have to do cuts. And it happens in the next biennium. That's why this election is going to matter. Because if you don't pick people who are going to maintain the budget responsibly in this election cycle, then what's going to end up happening is our taxes are going to go up again in either 2019 or 2020, and most likely in 2019 because it's not an election year.
That's very true. I mean, they like to do some of those tax hikes when it comes to off-election years. They get elected. They say they didn't have to, like you mentioned. Oh, look, we got through it. We were able to increase educational funding. We didn't have to raise the taxes. And then by next year, and I'm sure they use the example of, well, look, we've had tax receipts higher than projections on a month-by-month basis for 8, 9, 10 months at a time. So we should be in pretty good shape because the economy's coming back. I mean, was that kind of the conversation that you've heard from some?
Actually, if I could put out a comment here on Mr. Carpenter's recent comment, I'm going to say we actually did have a tax increase here just recently, and it was on the one that was stalemated 59 to 59. By not passing that bill effectively, there was
itemized taxes.
Well, there was $300 million coming from the feds back to the state of Kansas that should have went to the people of Kansas, and that's where it was earmarked. It's $300 this year, and I believe $80 going on year after year after that. But by the moderates and the Democrats voting to give that money to the state, essentially, you and I had a tax increase.
Sure. No, that's right. We had an opportunity to itemize, and again, it was, that would cost revenue to the government, so we can't do that right now because we need the money. And, by the way, we're coasting really well with tax receipts on a monthly basis. Let's hope and hold our breath and cross our fingers and toes and hope that we continue on that way, so that way we can get through the elections, and by next year we can see more tax increases.
Well, and one of the things, Andy, is that people that do itemize on their federal tax returns, which are those in the upper income brackets, they'll still be able to do that on the state level.
They can still do that.
Yeah, it'll be the average person out there, and that was the concern for many of us legislators, because the bill that passed out of the Senate that we tried to pass in the House would have taken from 50% on your mortgage, your property taxes, etc., and would have taken that from 50 to 75%, and then by 2020 it would have been 100%. And then it would have also raised the standard deductions for an individual from $3,000 to $3,750, for head of household $5,500 to $6,875, and from $7,500 to $9,375 for married couples. So yes, it was a pretty good tax increase for the lower and the middle class.
Very interesting. So I guess the question is, what potential tax increases could we see? As you mentioned, I mean, over the next 5 years, Blake, we could see, $3.5 billion in additional funding. I'm sure in our 2-year budget cycle, they could try and fight for more increases. Did we give, by the way, the $20 million to the judicial branch for their salary increases? Was that part of the budget from this year? Did we pass that?
Yeah, it wasn't $20 million. It was $7 million. 2.5% of that went to giving the judges pay increases, which I didn't support. I mean, they already make $120,000. If we were going to give pay increases to anybody, it needs to go to non-judicial staff. So basically, the people who have to, work 3 or 4 jobs just to make ends meet.
Sure.
These people aren't making any money, really hardly at all.
And the stories that the media was saying how we opened up food banks for these individuals.
Well,
right?
And exactly. Not only that, but the Chief Justice comes down to the House floor and lectures us to how we're not giving their staff members enough money, but yet they're telling us that we have to spend more on education. So it's like, okay, well, what do you want your priority to be here?
Right.
And so really, there was about $7.5 million. I would say about $6 million of that ended up going towards the non-judicial staff employees, and about $700,000, I think, went towards the judicial pay increases. It was something along those lines.
Okay. Let's take a break here. We got a lot to get to today. 316-728-2555, 18 minutes past the hour. If you want to comment or ask a question, you're more than welcome to do so. We have State Representatives Brenda Landwehr, Leo Delperdang, Blake Carpenter in studio. I want to talk a little bit more about the budgetary issues coming up with next session, what we could look at comparatively, what we could potentially see when it comes to tax increases. And then let's shift gears a little bit, talk about some of the Medicaid and some of the Second Amendment stuff that happened this year. Plus, we do have to give some good news, of course, when it came to the foster care and the adoption agencies, and one of the last things that we did in the session that I think was a very positive thing. So we'll talk about that and a heck of a lot more. 19 minutes past the hour. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay right here.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason. 25 minutes past the hour. Appreciate you hanging out with us today. Better than a cup of coffee, a shot of espresso, even an energy drink. And just because Blake's here, I got to throw in some metal into the rhyme, because I know that you are one of the biggest metal aficionados that we have, right?
Would that be gunmetal blue?
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
Exactly. See, there you go. 316-728-2555. Our legislative recap. State Representative Blake Carpenter, Leo Delperdang, and Brenda Landwehr. The phones are lighting up. We got some excited people talking about all these issues and more. So let's go right to them. Line number 1. Good morning. What's your name?
Hi, Andy. This is Helen.
Helen, how are you?
I'm doing just great.
Good.
I have a huge question for our representatives.
Okay.
In Amendment 9, it says the enumerations in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. So we, the people, have the right to be represented by our representatives, and they have the Constitution also says that they have the power and authority to collect. Section 8, Article 1, Section 8, the Congress shall have the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts, and excises to pay the debt.
Mm-hmm.
Not to create debts, but to pay off the debts.
Sure.
And then they have the power and authority in Article 3, Section 2, over the judicial powers. And the judicial powers are very limited. Judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity arising under this Constitution, the laws of the United States. So they need to just basically ignore the judicial system, because they don't have the authority to tell them what to do.
Well, that's a good point, and that's why we've been trying to fight for the constitutional amendment to try and limit some of that and be able to try and put some of that power back into the actual legislature rather than the Supreme Court. If you guys want to comment on that.
Go ahead.
I guess I'll throw out the comment that it's a little hard to ignore them when the judges have the gun to your head, But same token, that was one of the strategies we were looking at. Is it a bluff? Do we call their bluff? Do we just hold firm, let them attempt to close schools, and hopefully it goes on to the Fed, and the Fed would possibly overturn it?
Well, here's the question though, and I posed this last Thursday with John Whitmer and Chuck Weber as well. The question is, if we do call their bluff, because it really is a bluff, I mean, how can they force either the state treasurer to not sign the checks for the schools or to tell the schools you need to shut your doors? I mean, how do they have an authority like that? So even if they make a threat like that, is it even a viable threat, or do they have a legit way of actually making that possible?
Well, most of us don't believe that they do, and we also have a statute on the books that says that they cannot do that. They cannot.
So how can they use that as a bluff?
Well, that's what we'll find out. It depends upon what happens. With their decision that'll probably come to us next month, and I find it ironic that they're worried about the 25% of the kids that can't read and do math at grade level. But yet they want to say, "Oh, we're going to take your school away from you." I mean, that just does not make sense.
We want you to get educated and smart, but you're not going to be allowed to go to school because we didn't give you the right amount of money, even though you were able to open last year with the same amount you have now. You're not going to be able to do that again this year,
right? Well, and I think it's also kind of I think very unprofessional for judges to basically threaten the legislature, and that's exactly what they've done. As Representative Delperdang said, holding the gun to our head. And, the sad part is it all comes down to whether or not you can get 63 votes in the House for something, 21 votes in the Senate, and a governor's signature.
Well, and I mean, here's another thing. We're also talking about a court that is potentially about to find a right to an abortion in the Kansas Constitution. If you look at it, they're looking at the portion that says life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And, well, they're ignoring the word life. And they're going to the word liberty and saying, well, you have the liberty to be able to have basically abortions whenever you want.
Sure.
And then what they're potentially going to do, what the left is trying to do, is basically get rid of all the pro-life legislation that we've passed in recent years by finding that right to an abortion in the Kansas Constitution. And so the issue really is that with the way that these justices are appointed, they're pretty liberal, and most of them came in during the Sebelius years, and so I mean that's kind of what we're seeing right now. And if we keep them retained, then that's kind of what we have in the Supreme Court branch here in the state level. So
sure, no, you're right. And I mean to mention what Helen had mentioned as well, that what she was reading too was the federal Constitution. Along with the state constitution, which I think things may be a little bit different at the state level, but we still have that separation of powers. You guys still have the power of the purse in the legislature as opposed to the Supreme Court, and we have to be able to remember what those separations of powers are. It's got a lot more coming up. Got some more calls on the line. They're still lighting up. We'll get to you as soon as we come back. Don't go anywhere. Halfway through already. This goes by way too fast. This is the Voice of Reason. Stay here. Welcome back into the Voice of Reason. 35 minutes past the hour. Oh, we got to play our rejoin. Hold on here.
It's time for Reason.
We just increased education funding last year, $400 million over the next 2 years. That's not enough. They wanted $1 billion. So what do? They compensate by now coming out with a new lawsuit or continuing the lawsuit, asking for an additional $600 million.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Hey, there we are. I got to set the tone as we're talking with our legislative recap 2018. State Representatives Brenda Landwehr, Leo Delperdang, Blake Carpenter here in studio. And time goes by way too fast. We got another good segment with them. The phones are lighting up. I do want to touch on, before the segment is done, I want to touch on Medicaid expansion and the fact of how many times that was tried in the legislature this year, which was unbelievable. And then I know, Brenda, you had worked a lot on some mental health things here in the state. We'll talk about that, along with some Second Amendment stuff, because I know, Blake, you followed that pretty closely as well. So a lot of stuff to get to. Your thoughts and calls as well, 316-721-8255. And let's go to the phone lines. Line number I guess we lost one. Let's go to the Netherlands here, shall we? Line number 2. Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, this is Joe.
Joe, what's going on, man?
Brother, I'm just blessed every day. You know that.
Every day. I love it.
believe it or not, I don't want to talk about schools.
So what? Say what? Hold on here. There we go. That's all right. What you got for us, Joe?
Shocker, I
Shocker.
know. Yes, but I do want to talk about this. It is 2018, and we still don't have 4-lane highways on Highway 50, 54, and 400. Why?
Ooh.
For the name of God, why do we not have 4-lane highways? We should have done this in the 80s and 90s, and we're, Kellogg. I mean, think about it. When you get to Kingman, it stops right there.
Joe, we like our nice rural community look, and that's why we've tried to preserve our traditionalism of pretending that it's a small community.
Good luck with that.
Good luck with that. That's a good question. What you guys got on that one?
If I could throw in, I actually sit on the Transportation Safety Budget Committee, and as you all have heard, the Bank of KDOT, there's a project out there known as T-Works. T-Works currently has 23 projects sitting in there, some of which he hit on squarely. But the money through the years as for these projects has come from the sales taxes. That money gets swept on out. You'll never guess where it's been going. A lot of it's been going over to education funding.
Oh, man.
So this last year, while we had testimonies from the Secretary of KDOT, Transportation, he was talking about the T-Works projects. And I stopped and I said, "No, first off, how many projects are we talking?" He's 23 projects. I said, "Where's the funding for these projects?" "Well, they come from the sales tax." And I said, No. Opened up a couple pages and it showed I think it was $523 million. We had just swept it on out of there. So he got a little beat red on that. He didn't want to answer it after that because I asked him, "Where are these projects sitting?" "Well, we're really not doing them.
We're just not doing them.
We're not doing them." So at that point, I got with the chairman of the committee, J.R. Clays, and we worked it to get some money back in there. And I'm going to say roughly $200 million. It's not exactly, but that roughly $200 million we moved back into KDOT's funding to get some of these T-Work projects going. So I'm hoping we may see some more 4 lanes because I'm with you on that one. I'd love to see 4-lane all the way to the Colorado border.
That would be
needs to happen.
That would be kind of nice. I would like that. Joe, that's a great question. Kind of interesting one there. I appreciate that very much. Now we have talked to the Department of Transportation a few times, and I mean we're spending close to $1 billion in maintenance every year, and at least we have that. I mean we are still number 2 in the entire country when it comes to the quality of our state highways. So we're doing well on the front of maintaining what we currently have, but as you mentioned, we've fallen very short in actually doing the projects that need to be done to expand based on the growth of population, based on the traffic congestion that we've had, and based on some of the growth that we've seen in the state of Kansas.
Right. Now I will say, if for those who have driven around in other surrounding states, Kansas has some pretty good roads. I believe we're rated number 3 in the nation, and the KDOT budget.
We bumped up to 2 from what I saw.
You are right. I think we have bumped up additionally too.
Because
and again,
we're that awesome.
Well, it's the maintenance, and we are spending roughly, I think it's $1.2 billion a year on the maintenance and the KDOT budget there.
Sure.
But there are several projects in the works that we need to get going.
Very interesting.
And they are starting.
Let's go to the phones again, shall we? 316-721-8255, line number 3. Good morning. What's your name?
This is Gutterball.
What's going on, sir? How we doing?
Hey, rather than change the Constitution for the education stuff, I think they should circumvent the Constitution as the lottery and casinos did. Article 15 of the Constitution, miscellaneous, item 3, and here's a quote: "Lotteries and sale of lottery tickets are forever prohibited." Then they went in and put in 3.3, and it says, notwithstanding 3 above, it's okay to have casinos.
Well, you can, I don't think that's circumventing it. I mean, you can amend the Constitution if you had the right votes. I mean, there's a difference between ignoring the Constitution and amending it, isn't there?
Well, they circumvented 3 that says lotteries and sale of lottery tickets are forever prohibited. That is still in the Constitution, and I think it's a stinker.
Oh, so you don't like that one? Okay.
I think circumventing the Constitution is a stinker.
Well, sure. I would agree with that one. Absolutely. I appreciate that. And I'm glad you brought that up because we were talking a little bit about some of the gambling in the state and how the gambling's kind of set up and the expansion thereof, or gambling tickets and that sort of thing in lotteries. So I appreciate that. And I want to get your guys' thoughts first on that, because I'm with them. I don't like the circumventing of the Constitution, but that was more of an amendment, an amending a portion of the Constitution to allow it. I mean, it was not allowed before. We have now legalized it to make it allowed. We haven't really grown or expanded when it comes to gambling or lottery sales very much, but we are doing it as of right now. Do you see any changes to that anytime soon? You guys know? Not really?
Brenda was there. Brenda's been there longer and was there during the original debate. Brenda was
not
there.
Not lottery.
Not the lottery debate?
No.
Okay.
Not the lottery debate.
Okay, I thought you were there.
So you guys weren't there at that time when that one happened.
No.
But I mean, I know that he may not like it. I mean, I got no problem with the lottery, with gambling. I think that it could potentially bring in revenue, and it's fun and something to do. But if you don't like it, that's fine. So I think there's a difference there, though, between the circumventing and just blatantly ignoring the Constitution. Let's go back to the phones here. Take another phone call. Line number 1. Good morning. What's your name? Hello. Going once, going twice. All right, give us a call back. We'd love to hear from you. Let's take another one here. Line number 4. Good morning. What's your name?
Good morning, Andy. It's Ron.
Ron, what's happening, sir? How are you?
Great show today.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank all the representatives for all they do for all of us out here wandering around in the wilderness.
It is tough for us sometimes. We seem to be walking around aimlessly sometimes, wondering what the heck's going on.
My thing is this unbudgeted liabilities we keep getting, or they keep getting up in the legislature that they got to scramble to try to take care of. This gray little thing, the chancellor, they are using taxpayer money to, she's already got a Mercedes-Benz retirement, and now they're going to sweeten the pot by giving her same salary to be a special counselor to the advisor to the university. Yeah, and this is just ridiculous. This has got to stop. Same way with all these schools, that the school bonds. They have to scramble up there every time they pass school bonds and stuff like this. This is just cronyism to me with Mrs. Gray Little.
That's a great point. I appreciate that. You guys' thoughts on that one?
Well, I would completely agree. I mean, making $500,000 after you've already retired, that's a pretty sweet deal.
Just
sign me up.
Yeah, sign me up. How do I do that? Yeah.
I would say one of the things that attributes to that kind of just blatant waste of taxpayer dollars, that person's no longer providing a service to anybody. But I would say it's because, to a certain point, the legislature is only in for a few months out of the year, and we don't have the ability to go in and watch and maintain and look at all these budgets. So basically, like for instance, K-12 education, we write a blank check to K-12 education, we write a blank check anyway, but no, we write a check, and then we send it to the school districts, and the school districts cash it, and then they determine how it's spent.
Sure.
And so, for instance, the Wichita superintendent down here in 259, she got a $15,000 pay increase after 5 months of work on the job, and now makes $300,000 a year. Come on.
And then hired a deputy superintendent to be able to help her out because, hey, we need the more help on the administrative level.
But that goes back to the local school districts.
Exactly.
The local school boards make those decisions
it's
on
not
spending.
You guys.
And that's where people get confused. They want to complain to us where the spending's at. No, they need to go to their local school boards.
Well, even coming back to the former chancellor, that's a decision made by the college, not made by the legislature.
Exactly.
And so they're determining how they're spending their budget. And so really we could go in and we could, do something to make it to where they change their policies, that kind of thing. But ultimately it's
you can't micromanage it.
That's what it comes down to. And we're only there for a short amount of time.
Because in the state constitution, K-12 has self-executing powers.
Mm-hmm. No, you're right. I mean, we have to look at where the money's going and then who's delegating the money at that level, because you guys just say, all right, you requested this amount of money. You said this is what you need to be able to operate. We're sending you the check for that, and then have at you and go do your thing. And then they're spending it unwisely and coming back and saying you didn't give us enough money. Yep. And we really have to take on back that mentality of the personal responsibility. We got about 6 or 7 minutes left. I do want to talk on, because this goes by way too fast, but to Brenda, I know that you've been working really hard on some of the mental health issues. It was tied, some of that was in part of the educational plan that came out towards the end, but outside of that as well. Did we move anywhere when it came to mental health in the state, and where are we at? Because I know that's been kind of been your baby for a while.
Well, I think we did. Last year we were able to put some money into our community mental health centers, which we really need, because we shut down Topeka State Hospital, we shut down Winfield State Hospital, and we said we'd put the money in the community. Well, guess what? We're not putting the money in the community. And then we wonder why it is that we have our state mental hospitals that are where we can't not do any voluntary admissions.
Sure.
Period. You have to be issued by court to go to there.
Because they're overloaded.
Well, they're overloaded, and that gets into another big issue. But mental health is playing a big part in our lives. Johnson County has a pocket of a high suicide rate up there. They're trying to figure out what's going on. Wichita is starting to see that increase. And, in western Kansas, people think, oh, western Kansas, it's happy. No. We're just seeing a big increase in that. So we tried putting more money into some of those back into the community. The biggest thing I think is going to be a game changer for K-12 is creating a mental health for our schools that will be 24/7, 365 days a year. Whereas right now, if you get services for mental health in the school, it's only while the school's open. So we've got a pilot program out there with 6 of our school districts across the state. Wichita will be one of them. Topeka and KCK are our big urban districts. And then we have 3 western Kansas, so that we can get a good flavor of what we're doing. But it brings together.
Now, when you mention mental health in school, what does that entail? Is it like a therapist in the school? Is it someone at the school to help this? I mean, what all does it entail? What's involved with it?
It's gonna provide counseling. Counseling for the students in the school, which they've been getting some, but the schools cannot supply what the kids need.
Sure.
And when the child leaves the school building, are they getting it at home when a crisis happens or occurs? Is there a need within the whole family unit, maybe having some services in that? So this pilot program will provide for our community mental health centers to beef up the number of therapists and counselors that we need, because there's just not enough of them in the state. The governor tried to come in. He said, well, we'll give you 150, each year for the next 5 years. You can't find 150 counselors. So why take and spread our resources even thinner? This pilot program, the first group is our alpha group, we call them, which is our foster care kids. So they're definitely in that group. And then we have our beta kids, which are the severely emotionally disturbed kids. And I think it will relieve some pressure, both from staffing as well as a financial deal down the road for K-12, so that some of our special education money can get spent on other kids besides just some of these that really are high need kids.
Mm-hmm. Is there a statute on how many students in the school compared to how many counselors that there need to be there? Because I remember our school, we had, it was a smaller school, close to 400 students in the entire high school, and we only had one counselor for the entire school. Is there any type of statute where it's based on population of the students, how many counselors need to be at the school?
No, it's not.
Okay.
No. And you can't, you don't want to blanket. This program is not going to be a cookie cutter. The only thing that will be cookie cutter will be the forms that we're using.
Sure.
And the database. That's the thing that's very exciting too, is creating a database out there so that we can actually track these children. Are they improving? Are there, less disruptions in the classroom? Is the attendance better? Are tardiness better? A whole lot of things, not just on the academic side. Sure. And I think it'll also be a relief for, some of our teachers out there, because I learned this year something that really shocked me was the stress level of kindergarten teachers. I'm like, wait a minute, kindergarten teachers should be the happiest. They're fun kids. It's
right.
Like, no, because they're coming in with high needs. We have a behavioral health issues. We have, a lot of single parents. We have, fatherless families. We have families where, the boyfriend's moved in and is probably not the most appropriate person to be around kids. And it creates a lot of problems. We have, 2 working families, and that's been going on for a lot of years, and it's having an impact. Also learned a lot about how video games have an impact and just computer screens in general with the mind of these young kids, because they're still developing. Mm-hmm. And so there's a whole lot that goes into it. We're really excited about it. We're also nervous about it because it's taken a lot of work to try to figure out how to bring 5 agencies together.
Sure.
And make the money flow the way it's supposed to flow. But we're going to stay on top of it. And we've had a lot of positives from all of those agencies, as well as most of the school districts. We've got one out there, and I think it has to do with a school board member kind of thinking that she should have been in on the decision making, and she wasn't.
Sure. Well, some people get upset about that sometimes. We got just about 2 minutes left. I do want to wrap up here a little bit, but Blake, I want to ask you, I know you followed a lot about the Second Amendment issues in the state. We started off with a state reciprocity bill, kind of got out of hand with some regulation and control and kind of turned into a not so good bill. At the end of the year, what's your thoughts on the Second Amendment? Did we advance? Did we at least stay strong? And what could we see next year?
Well, we didn't go backwards, but we didn't gain any ground on the Second Amendment this year. The reciprocity that you were talking about, basically in 2015, we had the ability we had reciprocity agreements with other states that have individual citizens in their state that have the ability to carry at 18, 19, and 20. And so we had agreements with those states, so they could come and carry it inside Kansas, but our citizens have to carry at 21 or older. So what the attempt was to change that concealed carry age here in the state of Kansas to 18, 19, and 20 as well, and then also acknowledge these other reciprocity agreements. And unfortunately, it failed in the Senate because the some people in the Senate decided not to bring it up.
Sure.
But I think what you'll see coming back next year is various Second Amendment bills that we had throughout this biennium. The first one's the reciprocity item, like you were talking about. The second one is getting us over the line to where we can allow school staff members to be able to conceal carry to better protect our students, to make sure that they're not soft targets. And then I think the third that I'm looking at is getting rid of policies at the universities that say you can't have a round in your chamber.
Sure.
When you carry.
Sure. Well, and maybe we can start exposing some of those that felt like repealing the Itty Eagle program as well, or voting against the Itty Eagle. That was a little ridiculous as well. About 45 seconds, Leo Delperdang, you get the last word here as we wrap up. But overall, your thoughts on the session. Was it a dud? Could we have done more, obviously? And then what do you expect going into the session next year after the midterm elections?
All right. And first off, thanks for having us, too. I'm not going to say it was a total dud, but yet I just like the previous year, I'm disappointed that we didn't go after and tackle some of the hardcore stuff early on. Why are we waiting until the very last minute? They come out and throw the documents in front of us. We've got 30 minutes to read through it, and you're trying to do your votes on this stuff. Important things, whether it be education, whether it be taxes, whether it be budget, I think it needs to be done earlier on with some time to really study the issues and debate them through properly. But it's just one of the tactics that we get thrown at us up there, and it's one of the things we have to deal with.
Sure. Well, it is a frustrating session. I think that we could have, as you mentioned, do a heck of a lot more, but we ended up not seeing that. Hopefully we can focus on that, not only with the election on who needs to get up there to get the job done, but then be able to focus on it when we come back next session. State Representatives Blake Carpenter, Leo Delperdang, Brenda Landwehr, thank you all so much for coming in. I really appreciate it. We love being able to get the information out on what you guys did up there, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Always a good time. Let's take a break here, wrapping up the show today. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
There it is, all said and done. Thanks again to all the state representatives, Brenda Landwehr, Blake Carpenter, Leo Delperdang. Thanks again to last Thursday with John Whitmer and Chuck Weber. And we still have not touched on all of the issues. We're going to have to do a part number 3 and do the trilogy on this and get some different state legislators in and talk some more about this, because there's a lot to get to. Haven't even talked about Medicaid. Haven't even talked about some of the other major things that's happened in this legislature, and we need to do so, and I think that's what we'll do. There's just not enough time in the day, not enough time in this show, and we just have way too much fun doing it, so we will do a part number 3 either later on this week or early next week. As always, we love having you hang out with us. Thanks so much. This is your show. It's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. This is The Voice of Reason on KQAM. Have a great Monday, everybody.